If he does come at you, then you simply do not have a chance.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine.
Monsters like these came to dominate the seas some 350 million years ago. Never was an animal like that. Never. The power and the aggressiveness of the thing was beyond belief. Ancient Indians prized his teeth for arrows.
Of the man-eater that is still alive.
And I know what a shark looks like because I've seen him up close.
We've got a panic on our hands. The shark is always the winner.
Pajamas. Change of shirt. Am I good to go for Fiji? I'm going to be wearing a pink wetsuit for the bull sharks, and I used to in the early days, and then I was asked not to wear it anymore because it made me stand out and the bull sharks noticed. Well, I thought that was good, but apparently it's not. I'm looking forward to it because I'll be seeing a lot of good friends. I haven't seen them for more than a year. I usually get out of the water screaming my head off with joy, jumping around. I love it, and I do, I love it. And maybe I'm a bit funny, actually, but I do. I just love going down there. I love seeing that big bull shark here, down.
Now, the spearfishing, were you successful?
Well, I was pretty good at it. I was about as good as a girl can get. One day I was down there, a shark came along and frightened us out of the water. It's quite exciting. They don't have hands. They feel with their nose, or in very few cases, they feel with their teeth.
Val has a little bump on the bottom of her chin. She says it's a shark's tooth.
I can feel it in there. It's very painful.
Valerie, thanks for coming in. You've been telling us for so many years that sharks are really nice fellas.
Well, I haven't changed my opinion.
Are you serious when you compare sharks to dogs?
Yes, because it's like any animal. Once you get to know it and understand it, you have a different attitude towards it altogether. And there are all sorts of dogs, and there are all sorts of sharks. And the dangerous dogs probably bite more people and kill more people than the dangerous sharks in the world.
We know so very little about what's in the ocean. And Valerie was one of the pioneers. Now, of course, her name was connected to sharks, 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 but she was doing many other things.
Most of us were afraid of, well, not afraid, but we were always cautious and concerned when we saw a bunch of sharks around, with the exception of Valerie, who thought that was going to be a good time. People were making a lot of bold claims about sharks and so on, and how dangerous they were. Valerie was the only one that I had met at that stage that felt they weren't that dangerous and you could actually play around with them, long before anybody else.
The first time I ever could see underwater, I was 14 years old, and I saw a piece of kelp. I thought it was amazing. It was going to and fro. And I knew I had to see more. I would slide into the water from the world that we all know into another world, a different world, alien. I was not part of that world. I was just a visitor. I think that was the start. My father had stomach ulcers, and he found it very easy to eat fish. And he wanted to please your parents, and I used to go out and spear and fish. And I was very good at it. Back in the 50s, there was so much marine life, you learned how to hunt, how to stalk a fish while holding your breath. The first shark I saw was a grey nurse. I was just terrified, expecting to be attacked at any minute. It got out of me all right. I just knew that they were killers.
The main holiday hazard in Britain is the weather, but in Australia, it's sharks.
No one wants to be bitten by a monster. When you think back to the 50s and 60s, the saying was, good shark is a dead shark. That was it.
Outside the harbor, sharks are caught every day by big game fishermen.
In those days, we didn't have the information that we have today. Nature was considered a dark, evil, space, something to do with the dark side.
Spearfishing was nerve-wracking. Every single step of the way was an adventure, a step into the unknown. And every time you did it, you came out with a little more knowledge. I understood my prey. I eventually joined a club. It was very exciting. There were dozens of clubs through Sydney. Spearfishing was very much a macho man's sport. When they had the first lady spearfishing championships, there were 7 women. There was about 700 men. There were just so many men.
In the 50s, diving was a completely male culture. I've talked with Valerie about what it was like to be a woman in this male-dominated culture. Because it was that way, she had to be stronger and sharper, better than everybody to make it.
She was quite lethal. She would have been the Lady Slayer back then. Interestingly, most of the great environmentalists and conservationists, they all started with hunting because they were the only ones who were out involved in these things.
Valerie is responsible for the boys' safety. She will demonstrate how to deal with the dangerous sharks. This dangerous shark is the largest ever killed by a lady skin diver anywhere in the world.
I've only ever killed one shark. I wish I hadn't, but at the time, there was no one to say this is a bad thing. They only said, oh, very good. Killed a lot of fish. The attitude was there was so much life in the ocean. You could take what you wanted and never make a difference.
A girl like Valerie Hayes knows that when she gets ready to dive, she must also be ready to defend herself from the dangers that are always there below the surface.
I think all mothers wanted their daughters to get married and have children. It's not that I didn't want children, I wanted to do other things. I wanted to have my own special life. Well, when I was 12, I was diagnosed with polio, infantile paralysis. They told me until I could walk, I could not go home. I hated it in there. They started sending me books. They sent me the great classics. Lorna Doone, Treasure Island, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. I just love those books. I read them over and over. I read Huckleberry Finn so many times. It took me on a mental adventure. I made up my mind I was going home. I struggled and struggled every day. And in 9 weeks, I walked out and my mother came and got me. They said I couldn't and I did it. I'm grateful that it didn't paralyze me for life. I've read those books and it made me see of all the possibilities on the planet. I didn't know how to achieve any of them, but I knew they existed.
But no one's anxious to be slaving over a hot stove, least of all mermaid Valerie Hayes. Anyone who's interested in having their picture taken by a mermaid, just line up, please. When someone like Valerie comes down here with a camera, you can bet all the best-looking fellas will offer to pose for her.
The club used to have these trips, you know. Ron was there. I noticed him because I used to see him spearfishing. He was different to the other guys. Ron had won 4 Australian national titles and the world title at this time. He was the best.
I was looking for adventure in the underwater world, and I used to take my 16mm camera out with the team of spearfishermen that I was with in those days, just experimenting.
I used to be there and he would ask me if I'd model for him. And I was extremely flattered. Of course I modelled for him.
I clearly remember the first time that I filmed Valerie underwater. I was very interested in Valerie because she was very attractive.
I had fun. Just flirting away, I guess. I made my own bikinis. And then one day Ron said, I'm going to buy you a bathing costume. It was yellow.
She was interested in the underwater world like I was. She was aggressive. She wasn't one of these wimpish women.
And then we decided to get married. I was the women's spearfishing champion. Ron was the world spearfishing champion. We were at the top of the trade. Ron and I discovered spearing a fish often attracted sharks.
During that period of time, divers were dragging 4 or 5 fish through the water. And of course we know now that if you want to attract sharks, you get fish blood and you drag it through the water. And so we were just being bait, basically, for a shark.
We heard about Rodney's shark attack with horror. He was a friend.
There was 485 stitches in my chest and 94 in my hand here. And every tendon except this one was broken. They had to stitch them back again.
Do you hope to continue skin diving one day?
I'll get in the water somewhere, sometime, but I don't know.
We knew it was a great white shark. Let's fish him. We were excited about the possibility of getting footage of this beast. Rodney had the idea of doing a great white shark trip. Of course I wanted to go at the time, but I couldn't go. The owner and captain did not want a woman on board.
Rodney arranged an expedition with Alf Dean. Alf Dean held the world record for big game fishing for great white sharks.
At the time, other people had photographed other sharks, but there were no images of great white sharks alive underwater.
I'd never ever seen it before on other people's documentaries, so I could see the potential.
After a couple of days, we pulled up at Memory Cove, and Alf said, I've caught and seen quite a few sharks here. So he started his whale oil drip. We got up in the morning and saw great big sharks.
The very first time I saw it, the hair stood up on the back of my neck because it was such a big shark. Holy cow, that's a mean-looking shark.
Ron actually sat on the duckboard at the back filming some footage and saw submarines with teeth.
I thought this was a very impressive animal. I thought I had something unique there.
It's like liking a lion, I guess. It's a special beast. After that, I hate to say it, it was just kill, kill, kill.
On that trip, Alf thought it was his duty to catch and kill as many sharks as he could, and we ended up on the boat, 5, 10 to 14 foot great white sharks spread out. And that was actually the first time I started to realise these great big incredible animals just killed and lost forever.
I thought it was sad. Really changed the way I looked at the world and spearfishing. After that, Ron said, actually, killing fish upsets me. I'm not doing this anymore. We put our spears down and never did another competition again. We said, from now on, I'm shooting them with my camera.
It was personal revelation that made that transition. Experience that convinced them. It wasn't somebody telling them, they could see for themselves. And I admire that.
We were selling more and more footage for television. They wouldn't just buy any underwater film. They wanted dangerous marine animals, or what they thought were dangerous. They wanted drama. And if I could be in the film, fluttering around amongst all these creatures, that was even better.
Valerie would go down and just pick up anything and bring it up and play with it, and just, it was remarkable. Here's this beautiful Australian gal doing all these crazy things that nobody's supposed to be able to do.
Ron often asked me to do very dangerous things. He used to call me sometimes, give it a go, Valerie. Whether I was cooking a new food or diving with sharks. I wouldn't say I thought I was a Bond girl. Everything I did was to make money. Bond was always wanting new camera equipment. He made all his own housings. He was a genius. I'd say the cleverest man I've ever met. We did whatever we could to make a living out of what we loved to do.
Do you want me to feed those little tiny fish, or do you want me to save it up for the big trout?
If there's not many of those little fish around, we'll look for the tiny yellow shells in the dendrophilia.
Back in the 1960s, there were a handful of people in the world that were shooting film underwater. There was Hans Haas in Germany. There was Stan Waterman in the United States. There was Cousteau in the south of France.
We saw Jacques Cousteau on television. He had a lot of money from the French government, and he had a lot of people to help him. Whereas we didn't have any of that. One thing we did copy a little bit from Captain Jack. He always wore a red beret. So I always wore a bright hair ribbon. That was my trademark.
The tailors were out there doing their thing. They were owning and exploring, you know, the marine environment by themselves. I mean, it was just Ron and Valerie. This was the golden age of new underwater information.
Very little was known around the world about sharks in those days. You can watch it from the boat all you want. You can cut it up and study everything about it and say, oh, it will do this, and be a great scientist. But you still haven't seen it underwater in action. The first great white shark I saw was like a freight train coming out of the mist. Magnificent. After that, I never missed a trip to go out and see sharks. I found them very exciting, and this little tin boat is sort of freedom when you get on the ocean. The whole world is yours. We were both always thinking of ways to find an area where there's good sharks. Marion Reef is in the middle of the Coral Sea. A fisherman knew about it, and he said there's a lot of sharks out there. So we baited up and we realised this was a good spot to film. So we got to know them better than most other animals. Next year we went back, and before we even dropped anchor, the sharks came up to our tinny. They knew the sound of our boat. They knew there'd be food. And we realised a shark can learn. And you can teach one a very simple trick very quickly if you want to. I knew what would make a good image. I was a photographer. It was a nice pink coral, and I knew where the sun was going to set. I started waving a bit of food around in front of the coral. And a white tip came in straight away, and I bonked him on the nose and wouldn't give it to him. Eventually he came over the pink coral and I gave him the food. I did that twice and he knew if he swam over the pink coral, a certain direction, he'd get a piece of food, just a small piece of fish. And it worked. It worked. The shot was exactly what I had planned. They learn faster than you can teach a dog.
She had the courage to face up to species which we didn't know very much about in those days, connecting with nature, and she was able to share her experience and adventures with the public. She helped everybody, including us, because she would show us what she was doing when historically we were staying away from them. Well, she didn't. She was the one getting close to it. And she would follow it, and she was fascinated to learn not just about the way it looks, but the behavior of that fish.
Blue Water White Death, the film, was dreamt up by Peter Gimble, an American, and he had a fascination with sharks, and he wanted to make a feature film. Peter had seen 2 of Ron's documentaries, and he knew we could work with sharks.
We're looking for the animal that...
Peter Gimble had us along to guarantee someone there who knew how to handle these beasts. And he gave us, Ron and I, the adventure of our lives.
How far ahead of us are the other ships now?
As an underwater shooter, I just saw in it a wonderful adventure. A search taking us to the Indian Ocean, searching for the great white shark.
I think that Peter and Ron and myself and Valerie gradually found our courses narrowing down onto sharks. This charisma that they have.
Blue Water White Death was probably the first of its type ever made. And to have a female in there, and a pretty blonde female in it with all those males, vote.
Which camera's going? Ryan? This one here.
There's a shark right under the bow.
We'd never encountered oceanic white-tips before. A species of shark responsible for more human deaths than all the other sharks in the world put together.
In the middle of all of those sharks and everything was pretty mind-blowing, but we thought we might get away with it.
When it was decided that we would leave the cage, I thought, we'll die. Now we die. Never for a second did I think of not going. Carcharinus longimanus bumped it 2 or 3 times, then bite it. And we figured that the shark would bump us before it bit, and if we bumped them back hard, we could make ourselves a place in the pack. We went into
just plain foolhardy, what they were doing. But what they did in the end was to provide the evidence.
Well, certainly they were exhilarated when they came up from those dives because they didn't know that they could survive it. In those days, people didn't dive with sharks. And those images, I think, represent a historical record of what there was at one time. And that's incredibly valuable.
Tried to tell him where to go. We all went to South Australia.
Here he comes in now. Here he comes in. It's a great quake. It's a great quake.
Yeah, I said you'd get it. I knew you'd get it.
Add to that a beautiful woman. You have a successful documentary in the makeup of it.
I really didn't realise what a big film it was going to be.
I've got Gimbals delighted with joy in there.
There was genius in the making of the movie. Valerie set the standard by being the first glamorous female to go out and have these dangerous adventures. And I was hooked.
Back in, Ron! Silly fool, I don't know what he's doing out of the cage. There, look at him, sitting on top of the cage.
I'm from a little village in Wales, and our local policeman, he had posters of her up on his wall as a child. It's worldwide. She was really, really out there.
Yeah, she was a revelation to me. She was strong.
There were no divers anywhere who hadn't seen Blue Water White Death. And among them was a diver called Peter Benchley.
Valerie and Ron were definitely Peter's idols. He was aware of the excitement of sharks. Peter had an idea for a novel about a fish, and I said, Peter, I just don't think that's going to work.
Universal Pictures got us a book from Peter Benchley called Jaws.
They sent us the galley proofs and a letter saying, do you think this story would make a good feature film? We both read it and Ron wrote back and said yes.
Well, this is not a boat accident, and it wasn't Jack the Ripper. It was a shark.
Jaws was our first big Hollywood deal. Ron said, I've got to do a good job here, it could be important. They had already decided that Steven Spielberg was going to be the director. He said, get the live white shark footage first. We had done this sort of thing so often, going out and trying to get a performance out of a shark.
I was pretty proud to get a call asking me if I could organise a major expedition, and at that time quite young, and I was pretty excited.
Peter postulated in Jaws that the shark was a big one, a 16-footer. And of course, Spielberg decided to make it into a 25-foot shark.
And this caused a lot of toing and froing between Universal and Ron, backwards and forwards. Steven Spielberg was very young. It was his second major film. He looked to me like a teenager.
I said, Stephen, there's a problem here. Our white sharks are only about 13 feet long. He said, no problem. We'll send out a half-size man and half-size cages.
Everything we filmed was half-size to make our sharks look bigger.
Skippy was my abalone dive boat. We used my little boat as the stand-in for the boat in the Jaws movie.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
They sent out this little man called Carl Rizzo. He was a half-sized man, perfectly formed.
Who used to actually be a stand-in for children on horseback riding and stuff. The little guy comes up to me and he says to me, when they pump oxygen into you, do you have to suck it in or is it pushed in? Which I knew straight away he had no idea how to dive.
He was allergic to the sun, he was allergic to salt water, and he was very allergic to sharks. And I remember when he saw his first great white, he was very nervous. He looked at this big thing swimming up behind the boat and he said, I should have asked for more money.
If I can get him close enough to this cage, I think I could get him in the mouth or the eye.
That shark with that cage.
You got any better suggestions?
I'm in the small half-size boat looking after him and I wound him down in the winch.
When Carl saw those great white sharks swimming around, he was terrified.
The director yelled out, quick, pull up Carl, he's drowning, he's drowning. So I wound him to the top and I was saying, what's the matter, what's the matter? And he said, my mask, it was filling up with water.
It was his reluctance that saved his life.
I was about 10 metres down, filming up. There's a shark there and I'm thinking, why isn't Carl getting in the cage?
Rodney was about to pick him up and pop him in. And the shark came in and it bumped into the cage and got its head stuck in the bridle. And I picked up the 16mm camera and I shot it on film.
When we were shooting the Australian sequences of the great white sharks, one of the great white sharks jumped into the cage boat.
With a horrible cracking sound, the bit of the decking where the winch was attached to the boat broke off.
It's giving way!
I saw Rodney pull Carl back.
The shark grabbed between its jaws, which can close and squeeze at 21 tons per square inch, grabbed and twisted a cage and then sounded with the cage.
And everything broke off and came tumbling down past me.
shark got out of it and swam away. We had what we call a good performer. It wasn't in the script, but they put it in because it was good.
How did you get sharks to do that? How did they get a shark to do all those things on cue? Oh,
well,
we better not tell the secret.
No, you have
No,
to. That you
don't
put
tell
them
the
in
secret.
training at least
Yes,
3 weeks
training.
before the film.
The 1975 release of Jaws is considered the first Hollywood blockbuster.
Have you seen Jaws?
Who hasn't seen Jaws by now?
Tale of a murderous white shark on the loose.
We just absolutely had no idea that people would be queuing up for miles to see it.
The line is about 12 people abreast of around the block.
Wonderful, just wonderful.
Ron and Valerie Taylor.
It was very well done. And we never expected this to happen, the reaction.
We thought it would just be a third-rate Hollywood B-grade movie that hardly anybody would ever see.
It has already made more money than any motion picture in history.
And of course, I jumped out of my seat just like everyone else because the whole theater explodes with terror.
And some people are now seeing phantom sharks every time they go near the water.
People's always coming up to us and asking us on the tower, is that Jaws or whatever.
I'm too young to die.
I can't tell you how many people said, "You go diving in the ocean? It's full of sharks."
When I saw Jaws, I was very devastated because I said, nobody's going to want to go in the ocean.
Jaws is a fictitious story, and it has not only astounded Ron and I, but it astounded Universal and Richard Zanuck and David Brown. But the public believed it.
Shark! We were amazed. You don't walk around New York worrying about King Kong.
It must be an instinctive subconscious fear of being eaten alive.
Fire, you son of a...
But Jaws did. It did set things back. The thing that I regret is that people went out and killed sharks. Everywhere. We became very upset by this.
Valerie and Ron Taylor, the great Australian cinematographers and divers, called me and said, people are going out on these slaughter trips to prove some sort of macho nonsense about themselves. And sharks are being killed left and right, and we are worried that there may be actually an endangerment of some of the species.
Peter Benchley said he'd have never written the book if he'd known what the aftermaths would have been.
People who saw the movie Jaws are afraid of sharks. Have we reason to be afraid of them?
You should treat them with caution, but you don't go around being afraid of motor cars.
Universal took Ron and I to America, and we toured the States doing every talk show, telling people that sharks were not like the shark in Jaws.
But there's an interesting point that not all sharks are dangerous.
You say that sharks are not dangerous, and yet both of you took part in 2 movies that portray sharks as being very dangerous. How do you justify something like that?
We have been criticised for promoting sharks as being man-eaters and dangerous, but Jaws is actually a fictional film, but it's such a realistic film that people tend to believe sharks are dangerous.
I don't think that people should stay off the beaches because they're afraid of being attacked by a shark. They're much more likely to fall over and break a leg on the way to the beach than they are of being attacked once they're in the water.
Ron, Valerie Taylor, thank you very much. We'll be right back after this message.
Take the whole drawer out, teeth fall out, you put them on a gold chain, and then go to the movie and see Jaws. Everybody thinks you're the best.
I feel if there's a shark in the area and the swimmer stays relatively calm, there's a very good chance the shark will look at him and say, well, I don't want that, and go away. When they start panicking, there's a very good chance they'll get bitten.
Once a shark bites, what does it do to the rest of you?
Most sharks just let go. They test with their teeth.
We have the fresh teeth that have been pulled out of a shark recently.
Ran out of shark's teeth, out of shark's jaws.
It's just a killing machine.
It's more dangerous to have a backyard pool. Did you know that?
Just wish we'd had more of it to sell.
I find them very frightening, as a matter of fact.
They didn't listen to me. Frankly, they didn't care. The killing still went on. Yes. What? Oh, well, that's it, isn't it? What about you? What are you up to, eh? Jaws gave all sharks a bad name. You know, there are over 400 species of shark in the ocean. Maybe 5 or 6 are potentially dangerous. Most sharks are totally harmless, like the grey nurse shark.
Here you have a gray nurse shark that looks like this fierce animal. Because their teeth are hanging out of their face, people think, we've got to kill that shark. I mean, they were completely exterminated off the coast of Florida. And that same thing could have happened in Australia.
They were being slaughtered. So I started writing letters, and I pleaded with the politicians, and I wanted the grey nurse to be totally protected. As a sparrow, I had killed 1 grey nurse. And now I wanted to save them. I needed to save them. Once I get my teeth stuck into an idea, I don't let go. There's nothing like having a good piece of underwater film and saying, see, it's harmless, it's like a dog. I kept at them and at them and at them. It worked. It's now legally protected. You know, it was the first shark in the world to be protected.
Valerie led the way. A huge piece of what conservation has become today all began, you know, with those little gray nurse sharks.
Valerie tried to explain and soften the ignorance to create an audience of shark lovers. There was that occasion where they actually had a shark that was tangled in a wire and they cut it loose.
When you see a great white struggling for life, you want to save it.
Towing a shark tail first is something you or I might hesitate. They did not hesitate. Yes, there was risk. They put that aside. They instinctively helped the animal.
pretty dangerous thing to do. But that shark knew exactly what we were doing.
Wow. Not a sign of aggression. Remarkable moment.
It swam out to sea and was caught by a fisherman 5 months later.
Conservation, there is no such thing on killer sharks because the general public realises they're killer sharks and that's all there is to it.
Great white sharks are in big trouble.
They're a very big animal, they live a long time, and they breed very slowly. I have a file that must be half an inch thick of letters I've written to have the great white shark protected before it's too late.
You know what they're doing? They're actually feeding that garbage to the government, telling them that they're an endangered species and all that. They ought to be in jail.
The only sharks he knows, the only sharks he works with, and he does it from the safety of the back of his boat, I might add, are sharks that are fighting to survive. Those sharks he catches are trying to escape. They want to live, just as you or I would try to escape and want to live if someone hooked us in the mouth.
This is the stuff nightmares are made of.
The very word is enough to scare most people out of their
Great white sharks have no peer when it comes to terror.
Anti-conservationists call sharks God's mistakes. It's just a heap of rubbish. They have been around unchanged for millions of years. That's not a mistake.
24 hours a day they're on the prowl.
I don't really think that a shark swims around saying, ha, there's a human, I must swim up and eat him. They don't think like that.
It's going to be a major problem.
Ron and I decided to prove to the general public that sharks were not out to get us.
I first got the idea for a suit of mail in 1967 when I saw a commercial diver protecting his hands with butcher's gloves.
Ron made a decision that we would try ourselves out as shark bait.
Marine biologist Jeremiah Sullivan has travelled from America to join the operation.
At the time, I was just a young student. I was studying the sensory systems of sharks as a marine biologist. The shark suit provided us an opportunity to do things that have never been done before, to really learn something.
Everything you do in life is a calculated risk. Even a cup of tea could burn you.
If only he would bite me instead of the fish, it would be a good test of the suit's protective qualities.
When I heard about Ron and Valerie's desire to test the theory that it's really dangerous to go in the water, period, because they're sharks, period, that they will eat you, period, and Ron and Valerie wanting to show that, you know, it's not that way. You can bait yourself, or come and get me. And the sharks had to be encouraged somehow.
We still didn't really know what would happen with shark bite pressure. I knew what probably would happen, but now this was the real deal.
Scientific opinion had the crush power of a shark's jaw as very serious indeed. Eugenie Clark, the great shark expert, said I would have the imprint of the mesh on my bones. The sharks don't have crush power. This is a misconception. We knew how they would bite. They rely on the cutting edge of their teeth. They try to saw through the metal and nothing happens. They can't get anything in. And we proved it with the mesh suit.
The editors of National Geographic wanted to use the story, and they sent our story to some American shark experts, and they rejected it as a hoax. But then we showed the editors our film, and the editors realised that the experts were wrong. The editors gave their referees a kick in the backside.
It's been 40 years that I've been manufacturing these things on a commercial level. Now there's a global shark diving industry, about $1 billion a year. That, to a certain degree, has been built out of the information that was gathered by use of the suits that Ron and Val and I started playing with so long ago.
It used to be brilliant for blue sharks. Back then, we saw them every day. They're a nice shark. All the ones that bit me are all dead now. They were finned. They're gone. They didn't deserve that.
There's a big market for sharks. The shark fin is being taken in enormous numbers.
I mean, you just can't continually take something unless you replace it.
In the last 20 years, with the increase of the middle class in China and the increase in shark fin soup consumption, there were 100 million sharks killed every year for 20 years.
Sharks are part of a web of life. We've just interfered. It's a terrible thing to kill a beautiful wild animal for its fins. It's like killing an elephant for its tusk and the tiger for its skin. You can't expect a fisherman on a little island to not catch sharks for their fins and sell them to the Chinese traders. It means good money. I used to climb onto the shark finning boats and take photographs. And one day, there'll be very few sharks left, and these photographs will be proof of where they went. Shark pics. Many, many, many. Sharks, sharks, sharks.
We only have 10% of the sharks left. And it really is all about knowing that leads to caring. Come on. These are magnificent creatures. Everyone an individual.
Look at them.
Everyone deserving of our respect.
It's one of my old shots that I really like.
We just need to think differently.
See how he smiles? Big smile on his face. The only way to halt the complete decimation is to make enormous marine national parks where you cannot take a thing. For a long time, we could guarantee great white sharks off Port Lincoln, South Australia.
Hello, Shucky!
Right on top.
That's a different one. That's Maria, I bet you.
Fins right out in the water.
Let me look. I bet it's Maria.
She'd love the whole world to be protected if she had half a chance.
Come on.
But particularly in South Australia, you know, it has been a huge part of her life.
Hurry, hurry. Hurry. Please,
Coming back. And great whites. I think Valerie would chain herself to a cage if she thought somebody was going to kill one unnecessarily, just to show that, hey, it's not going to hurt me.
I wanted to show all sharks have different personalities, and I'd never seen anybody hand feeding a great white shark off the back of a boat. There were 3 sharks around, and one was very sweet. I wanted to give that nice shark, he was a boy shark, my fish. Mark, my nephew, was so worried about it. He hung onto my shirt and I thought, that's not going to do any good. If this thing grabs me, all you'll have left is a handful of shirt. Don't tell me they don't have personalities. They do.
We need people like Valerie out there to do that. And she went through government to get that area protected. Thankfully, it happened. It was named Ron and Valerie Taylor Marine Park. I think it's ironic that the same place where they filmed Jaws is now a place where great white sharks are protected.
When we made our first shark film, Ron said, well, we've done the shark film, now we'll go to something else. We were still doing them. And we couldn't make a living doing the same thing with a butterfly. Gee, it'd have to be some butterfly. Our marriage was a type of adventure. Ron, he liked me to be in front of his camera. He liked me to be diving with him. And it's not just loving someone, you can love a lot of things. There's all sorts of love.
You can drill it, and you've got the cameras in the housing, you can see where the controls are.
He didn't feel very well, and he went to our doctor, and the doctor said he has acute myeloid leukemia. He said it's always fatal.
Getting ready for a night dive. I like night diving. It's very interesting because you see critters at night that you don't see during the day.
You never see Valerie afraid of anything. She knew he was going to die, but she didn't face it.
I didn't think Ron would ever die. I'd look at that beautiful man and think that He can't die. He was quite beautiful, I thought.
Ron Taylor and his wife Valerie gave away hunting to become famous for their dedication to marine conservation. Mr. Taylor died peacefully at a private hospital near his Sydney home this morning.
I do miss him. I miss him so much. He was everything. Mostly I miss just cuddling up in bed, really. I go to bed and there's no Ron. It's a sort of lonely thing. I take a pillow. I put it on my left side, my pillow. Ron and I did our last dive together in Fiji with the bull sharks. It was special. Hello. Hola.
I know personally that it's been difficult at times for her to dive places that she dived with Ron. I remember her saying that she thought she would never be back there again.
There's a lot of memories involved. Ron and Valerie were instrumental at the beginning of getting this great conservation success story started. Became very, very involved with the local community. Due to overfishing, you had a completely dead reef, no fish on it, nothing. And over time, by feeding the sharks, now it's the only place I know of where you're likely to see as many as 80 or 100 bull sharks.
Ben!
Ah, Bula Vinekavel.
Ah!
How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome home, welcome home. Thank you so much. How was the trip?
Okay, so you're going to look after me.
I will.
You're going to find it hard.
Why is that?
I'm so old.
No.
And
But I'm still young.
Oh, yeah, good. I like that. And you're very strong, I can tell.
Thank you so much. I understand that you have a nice pair of wetsuit. Is that right?
I have a pink wetsuit, but I hurt my shoulder and I can't get it on. Anyway, I've got to get myself organised. Oh, my fingers. Poor old fingers. Concentrate, concentrate. Ouch. Never mind. It's all right. Every dive has the potential to be a great adventure. People think you're mad, but you're not. It's something that many people would love to do, but they're too afraid. I guess there's always the chance a shark could make a mistake, and that's what it would be, a mistake. G'day! Good morning! Good morning! Oh, Michael! Oh, darling, I'm a star. The village that owns the reef protects sharks, and they guard it like it's a rare jewel, which it is. And it has made the village much richer and given work to the village people.
So we're going to see bull shark coming from the arena and grab these tuna heads just above us.
This is our favourite part.
Sorry.
There we go, we get it all sealed up there.
Yeah. I'm ready. I can't believe it. Oh, no, I'm not.
All right, you go.
Someone is going to have to get me up.
There's 3 big pigeons here.
Yeah, I like that. Go there. Clean your hair. I'll jump.
You're there.
Nature made the perfect animal. That wonder has never gone away. It's a survivor from long ago. Underwater's wonderful. It's a great feeling, and so many people don't really understand it because they feel it's full of dangers, which it isn't. I will probably be diving when I'm in a wheelchair. There's no gravity, I can fly. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, it's a fabulous area down here.
It is.
Very rich.
Well, a shark hit me. I hope they got it. Did you see the shark hit me?
Yes, a nice display.
He didn't mean it. It's only his
I think
tail.
some they'll probably recognize you.
I think
so
so.
close.
Yeah, they come in. I do know them. I've known them for a long time, I think.
No one can do everything, and Valerie has clearly done more than her share. But there is cause for hope. And all I have to do is look at Valerie and say, look what she's done. Why not you?
Anyhow, here's to the sharks.